On the morning of July 2006, I leave my hotel and head toward Shangla Top. This is a place that several local Pakistani riders had recommended to me the day before, a high point in the region known for its views and its position between valleys. But before I can even begin the climb, there is a familiar requirement. At the gate, the guard insists that I wait. A police escort is needed. This has become part of traveling through Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So I wait, and as has happened many times before, I am soon accompanied by security. What follows is something I have come to think of as a chain of escorts. Different units take over at different points along the route. One group rides with me for a while, then hands me off to the next, each responsible for their section. It is a system designed to manage movement through sensitive areas while still allowing travel. And with that, I begin the climb. The road to Shangla Top winds upward through the mountains. Unlike the stark landscapes of Kohistan or Baltistan, this region shows more vegetation, forested slopes, patches of green, and a softer terrain. The elevation brings cooler air, and the views begin to open as I gain height. Shangla has historically been a more remote district, with limited access until roads like this were developed. Even today it remains less visited than other parts of northern Pakistan, but it sits along important routes that connect Swat with other regions. As I ride higher, the road becomes narrower and more winding. Switchbacks cut across the slopes, and the valley drops away below. The escort continues, always present, a reminder of the administrative realities of travel here. But beyond that, this region has its own identity. Shangla district is one of the more remote parts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. For a long time it remained relatively isolated. Difficult terrain, limited infrastructure, and narrow mountain routes meant that access was never easy. Even today, that sense of remoteness is still present. As I continue the climb, the road begins to wind more tightly along the mountainside, switchback after switchback, each turn revealing another angle of the valley below. The slopes here are noticeably greener than what I saw further north. This is part of the transitional zone between the high arid mountains and the more temperate foothills. Rainfall is higher here, and that allows for more vegetation. You begin to see terraced fields carved into the hillsides. This is traditional agriculture adapted to steep terrain, each terrace carefully built to retain soil and water. In regions like this, farming is not just about planting crops. It is about engineering the land itself, stone by stone, layer by layer. These terraces have often been maintained for generations, a system passed down through families. Another detail that stands out is how villages are positioned. Houses are often built on slopes rather than valley floors, partly for protection from flooding, but also to maximize the use of limited flat land for cultivation. The architecture reflects the environment, compact structures, often using local stone and wood, designed to withstand both weather and terrain. Historically, regions like Shangla were connected not by roads but by footpaths. People moved between valleys on foot or by animal transport. Trade routes existed, but they were slow and seasonal. Winter snow could cut off entire communities for months at a time. The road I am riding now is a relatively recent development in comparison, and even now it feels like something that has been added to the landscape rather than fully integrated into it. You can still sense how dominant the mountains are. E-road adapts to them, T the other way around. The road adapts to them, not the other way around. As I continue climbing, the air becomes slightly cooler. The views expand, and the layers of mountains become more visible, ridge after ridge, fading into the distance. There is also a rhythm to this kind of riding, the constant turning, the gradual gain in elevation, the awareness of both the road ahead and the drop below. It requires attention, but it also creates a certain focus. everything else fades away, and the experience becomes very immediate. The road, the engine, the movement, even with the escort, or perhaps because of it, there is a sense of continuity, a steady progression through the landscape, each section leading to the next. And as I continue upward, it becomes clear that this climb is leading toward a point where everything will open up, where the valleys connect, and the perspective changes once again. Eventually, I reach Shangla Top. From here, the perspective changes. The surrounding mountains stretch out in multiple directions, layer upon layer of ridges fading into the distance. It is a high point, not just geographically, but visually, a place where you can see how the terrain connects, how valleys, passes, and routes all fit together. After spending some time at the top, I begin the descent, and once again the escort continues. Down the same road, back toward the main highway, the journey shifts once again. The smaller mountain road gives way to a broader, more structured route. But even here, the influence of the terrain remains. The road follows the contours of the land, bending around hills and descending gradually toward lower elevations. As I merge onto the highway, the sense of movement changes. Traffic becomes more frequent. Larger vehicles appear, buses, trucks, and long-distance transport. This is one of the main corridors linking the northern regions with the rest of Pakistan, a route that carries not only travelers but goods, supplies, and the everyday flow of life between mountains and plains. The road surface improves in many sections, wider lanes, more consistent paving, but the environment still reminds you where you are. Steep slopes are never far away. Now we approach a toll booth. The police escort rides ahead and simply waves us through. I follow behind without stopping. Normally, motorcycles are not allowed on these toll highways, but traveling with the police, it seems I am given an exception. It is another example of how different the experience can be when moving through the region under escort. And we continue like this. The escort stays with me as we move along the highway. Traffic flows around us, but the presence of the police creates a kind of clear path. Vehicles give way, and movement becomes more continuous. At times, the road is wide and fast. At others, we leave the main highway and pass onto smaller roads, through towns, through local traffic. The pace changes again, slower, more crowded, more connected to everyday life. Shops line the roadside. People move between buildings. Motorcycles, small vehicles, and pedestrians all share the same space. Even here, the escort continues, switching when needed, different units taking over responsibility for the next stretch. It is a coordinated system, one that ensures movement across multiple districts, but also one that shapes how the journey unfolds. There is a certain rhythm to it, not stopping, not pausing, always moving forward, following the lead vehicle. Even when passing through towns where, under normal circumstances, I might stop, take a closer look, or simply take in the surroundings. Instead, the ride continues, from highway to local roads to town centers and back again. A continuous passage through the region, guided from one point to the next. And after some time, the landscape begins to change again. The towns become more frequent, the traffic increases, and the sense of moving out of the more controlled areas becomes noticeable. We continue like this for some time, until eventually we reach the boundary of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and finally the journey with the escort comes to an end. The police officer riding on the back of the motorcycle, carrying a machine gun, steps off and says goodbye. With that, I am on my own again. I continue along the road toward Islamabad. The traffic builds, the roads widen, and the mountains gradually give way to the city. When I arrive, I stay at the same hotel I had used before, not far from the airport. The room is spacious, comfortable, and after so many days on the road, it feels like a welcome return to something familiar. There are good places to eat nearby, and for the first time in a while, Everything feels simple. No checkpoints, no escorts, no uncertainty about the road ahead, just a chance to rest and to look back